We're really delighted that Debbie has joined us tonight. Debbie has been recording wildlife since she was a child and been a keen wildlife gardener and photographer for many years. Citizen science has enabled her to combine all three interests, and for a long time she's been taking part in surveys such as the British Trust's for Ornithology's Garden Birdwatch. Debbie has also helped arrange activities with the Barnstaple and District local group of the Devon Wildlife Trust for around 24 years. So amazing achievement there, Debbie. Thanks for all your help with that.
And the committee.
Having recently retired, Debbie is now involved with all sorts of wildlife groups, undertaking conservation volunteering, leading guided walks, monitoring and recording wildlife across North Devon, that she hopes to continue for many years to come. So Debbie, I'll hand over to you if you'd like to share your screen.
Thank you. Okay. Bear with me a minute. Share screen. Right. Well, it's nice to see everyone and some familiar faces as well. I think there's going to be people, well, I know there's people in the audience who are a lot more experienced than I am with the citizen science and recording wildlife. And it's a real pleasure to start the Spring into Nature series that Nicola's put together. It's been a lovely day today, perfect spring day here in Fremington. So it's just so exciting to be able to look forward to getting out there and seeing what's around. What I hope to do with this presentation, I'm focusing pretty much on my garden, so sort of out the window and out the back door, so to speak, but I will touch on several surveys, recording schemes that I make use of. And I'll also be showing some photos of things that I've found in the garden. And the idea really is just to hopefully share what I've learned, and some of it's quite basic stuff, and perhaps encourage people who would like to get out and about a bit more and do a bit more recording to think about it. As you can see from the photos and from what Nicola said, I have been interested in the garden for many years, and I think the wildlife side, I must have been a bit of a pain to my parents with the amount of creatures I used to bring into the house and have a look at, you know, the usual caterpillars, but also spiders and ants and all sorts of other things as well. So it has been great fun exploring different places and finding out what lives there. So why be a citizen scientist? It's very topical at the moment, and citizen science isn't anything new, is it? It's been done in this country for several hundred years, perhaps not called citizen science, but there's always been people who are keen to get out about and look at what's out there. I think it's so important at the moment though, because conservation and wildlife is so high on the agenda, looking at providing data for scientists and policymakers, perhaps monitoring invasive creatures and plants. I've certainly had some interesting arrivals in the garden. And also all the talk about climate change, looking at what's going on around us, and the information we can feed into teams can help with that as well. Also, and this is always topical for me anyway, driving along the road, main road from Fremington to Barnstaple, there's a lot of building going on, and I think feeding in information about what wildlife and nature needs is really important to ensure planning is you know, monitored and done in an environmentally friendly way. Also key issues, you know, how do habitats vary? Is it good to have a tidy garden? Is it good to have an untidy garden? Should we have uncut verges or cut verges? All sorts of things can be looked at from information that we can get sent out to people. And how can we better help wildlife and managing our environment? I think the term citizen scientist sounds quite grand, but basically it's anyone, isn't it, who can see what's out there and then record it. A little bit, I just wanted to set the scene a bit about the the gardens and where I am. So a little bit about wildlife gardening. Again, some of you are already doing this, and I hope after I've done my presentation, we'll be able to share some ideas and discussion on that. First of all, stating the obvious, gardens are very, very important for our native wildlife and plants. Apparently there are around 15 million gardens in the UK, which is around about 270,000 hectares. So that's a lot of space if you added them all into a nature reserve. There already are a potential or habitats for lots of creatures, but if we take care to provide water, shelter, appropriate food, plants, be careful what sort of chemicals we're using or managing, they can be a large potential habitat. And certainly it's growing in popularity, and people are leaving little corners of their gardens over to wildlife, or a bit like mine, turning the whole lot over to wildlife if you can. And also challenge our views. You know, the term weeds, I feel is quite old-fashioned and misplaced. They are, after all, wildflowers, although sometimes there might be a few that are not native and might be a bit in need of managing. And lots of people love wildlife. I've got some figures here from the BTO. Around 40 to 50% of householders provide food for birds. And that's a huge figure on the nest boxes, 4.7 million nest boxes provided in UK gardens. So really important. Again, just reassuring people, you don't need to be total experts to do this. And it's really flexible, as much or as little time as you can give. A garden of any size, if you've got a balcony, a couple of pots, window boxes. Here's one of my stacker pond boxes. I have got a pond, but there were some plants that I put in that started to take the pond over. So I thought, well, I want the plants, but I don't want the pond to disappear. So I came up with a compromise of a stacker box pond. You can also use all sorts of containers for obviously setting up a little mini pond there. Obviously a window to look out of, a comfy chair. I'm lucky insofar as where my sofa is, I can just look out the window and record the birds. And there's all ways you can record. I'm sure you all know this: computer, smartphone, iPhone, iPad, pen or paper. I'm still very much pen and paper when I'm out and about. I haven't got a smartphone yet. And a willingness to learn, ask for help, ask questions when you aren't sure. And there's people in the audience here I know who've been brilliant and helpful for me when I've sent photos and said, please, can you tell me what this might be? And enthusiasm. What if I don't know what I'm looking at? This has been a big question for me, especially last year when I decided to do a bio-blitz, if you like, in the garden. But there's all sorts of information out there. In fact, sometimes it seems a bit confusing and a bit of a maze. I've found all sorts of books and leaflets helpful. I can show some of those at the end. And there's lots of places now where you can show your photographs. A quick advert for our North Devon Natural History Network Facebook page, where you can put photographs up on. But there's some very specialist ones. UK hoverflies I found very good. So you can sort of post a photo of a hoverfly, or even sometimes not a hoverfly, as I have done, and they'll be really helpful. But there's other ones there I've used: UK spiders, bug spotters, butterflies and moths, UK diptera, bees, wasps and ants. There are lots and lots. There's also now phone apps you can have. Not having an iPhone, I haven't tried these yet, but where you can take a photograph and get what you photographed identified. I think there's been a few teething problems with some of the IDs, but they seem to be getting pretty good. And loads of organisations like the Devon Wildlife Trust, Broughton Countryside Centre, Coastwise, lots and lots of different organisations run training sessions in the field, or friendly walks around where you can point out things and learn from others and get them ID'd. And I think the key thing is keep it simple, can specialise obviously, and just enjoy it. I must admit, over the years I seem to be gathering more and more recording, but I started off pretty much with the birds, I think it was. And this little photo here, a good example of me asking for help from the bug group. I knew it was a bug of some sort, but not sure which. There we go. A little bit about the garden. I took this a few weeks ago, not necessarily at its best, but it shows the structure of the garden. It's 40 feet by 50 feet. It's been managed for wildlife for probably about 25 years. And you can see it's pretty cluttered. Got lots of pots, and the pots have got all sorts of wildflowers and nectar-rich flowers in. Managed to just have a little space for the washing line. Around here, or in the middle, is the pond. Some shrubs here. There is a big birch tree here. I think if you have got space for a tree, a big tree, that's really helpful. A mixture of things like hawthorn and a plum, a damson plum along here again. And we're lucky, we're next to a field which has got a couple of oak trees there. All sorts of things here, an ivy tree. My other half, Mike, he likes to try and grow vegetables, which can be a problem when you've got a wildlife garden and lots of things that like eating things. So we've got some little containers and bins here with vegetables, little bits of vegetables in, and the compost heap corner. So it's cluttered, but there isn't much lawn. We did have a huge lawn at first, but it's gradually over the years disappeared. And then you need to think about the bigger picture. Obviously, all our gardens add up to larger habitats. So I'm around this area, and I'm so lucky. To the south, we've got quite a big wood. I think this is, I'm never sure which name it is. It slowly and breaks plantations. Then we've got agricultural land going up the hill here. Then over the other side, another nice sized wood. Got the Tarka Trail. And here we've got the Gaia Trust home farm marsh, and then obviously the river. So, okay, if I took the garden in isolation, that's one thing. But if you think anything from around here can either come in, wander in, fly in, get blown in, as well as some resident things that tend not to travel so far. So really lucky in where the bigger picture is for us. Right, really just to emphasize a few things I've done in the garden. Very keen to have quiet areas that don't get disturbed. Pond of any size, ours is about 8 foot by 6 feet. Compost heaps, ours are in the plastic containers, but I think open ones are really good as well. And we haven't really used any pest control or chemicals or so on for 25 years. And there has been quite a good predator balance as well to help us with some management. So the photos you will see in this talk have actually all been taken through the window or out the door in the garden. So apologies in advance if a few look a little bit misty. It's because I probably need to clean the windows sometime. Okay. A couple of other things. You can have all sorts of bug homes. This is someone bought me this, which is really nice. Mini ponds I've said about, a rather tatty shed, again, undisturbed areas. And I've mentioned the larger trees as well. If you've got space for some shrubs, the sparrows really love them. We didn't really have many sparrows until fairly recently, and they're quite territorial about their shrubs, and are actually starting to build some nests in the front garden shrubs. So shrubs for sparrows I've put down there. Areas obviously of woodpile and bits and pieces of twigs and so on. This is our green ivy person. I think ivy is really good. And then if you can try, if it's possible, not always possible with native flowers, but try and get things that are flowering year round. So I've put a picture here of Mahonia, which isn't native, but it's brilliant for being in flower January and February. So that will encourage, certainly we had some bumblebees and hoverflies in. And these are some of the other flowers that we've got in the garden. Some of these are in pots, others just spring up. So we've got betony there, which the bumblebees like, all sorts of creatures like that. Dandelions, again, I think I'm probably talking to the converted, but please leave dandelions. They're just so brilliant, especially at this time of year when insects are starting to come out of hibernation. We've got a nice carder bee there and peacock. Purple loosestrife, I've got one of those in my stacker pond. So again, lots of butterflies and insects like that. Red campion grows all over the garden, and so does this little one, Herb Robert, so that's really good. So hopefully that sort of sets the scene for, if you like, my mini nature reserve and the area that I'm recording on. I have to say I do go out and about and record in other areas, but I think using the garden as an example is quite a good way of doing things. And also it is so easy to nip out on a nice sunny day and have a quick look round. So the main one I've been doing for a long time is the garden bird watch, the BTO garden bird watch. And also, like a lot of people, I do the RSPB big garden bird watch at the end of January. And with the BTO, again, is all part of being part of the larger picture. So this is just a map taken off their website, which gives an idea of some garden bird watchers. So you can see how all these people, this is in Devon, are helping to contribute information across a very wide variety of habitats. So it's really taken as lots of people working together. It's important information. For those of you who've not seen Garden Bird Watch, I find this a really nice one. Obviously, I'm used to it. When I first started, it was a paper one, but obviously it's online now. And what you just do is keep a record of what you see during the week and then record the maximum number of whatever it is you've seen in the categories. So you've got birds, lots of different birds. Also, you can record butterflies, dragonflies, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, other insects, which is a mixture of bees and other things. You also record what food you've put out, and they've also got a health aspect. So if you find a bird that's looking unwell or another creature looking unwell, that's sort of gathered in as well. So you know, you can gather, and it's quite easy to do, gather all sorts of information. The collection, it's quite good. It has been free to join this one. I'm not sure if they're going to start charging for it in the coming months, but it has been free up until recently. Okay, the other one I do is the Garden Bird Feeding Survey, and this is still paper and pen, so that suits me. This one is usually from October to March. It's the BTO again. And that tends to be when I feed the birds as well. I used to feed birds all year round, but because of where I live, I think it was better that the birds went out and foraged in the woods and so on, and also the issue of cats and rats being more active in the summer months. So and really what they're trying to do here is get an idea of what the impact feeding is having. So you only record the birds that are coming into your garden to feed. So this was the last quarter I did. And you've got a set list of the most common birds, but also you can put in more unusual ones. So I've got sort of a black cap, and you can put in things hunting in the garden like sparrowhawk. So again, this helps build up a picture as to how important bird feeding is. And this one has been running for 40 years. So it's got a good deal of data that it's built on, and the information can be used for all sorts of planning and advising. That's another one, the BTO. Okay, what they do is then collate all the information. On the website, the Garden Bird Watch, you can look at your own figures and data, and there's all sorts of graphs and charts, and I quite like doing that as well, having this look, see how I'm fitting in with the picture. And what I've got here is just a profile of a couple, more than a couple, 4 or 5 birds that have visited the garden and how they fit in the picture. So you can look at how Devon compares with other counties. And here I've picked up the black cap, and certainly in our garden we've got we get the peaks in the winter months, and that's a trend that's been growing, and we have male and female blackcaps. And overall, the period of the garden bird watch survey, there's been an increase in sightings of the blackcap, and that's certainly been true in my garden. Greenfinch, unfortunately, our garden sort of mirrors the decrease as well. So these figures are, the most recent I could get was up to 2014, but got some other figures mirroring showing the decrease growing. I have to say this winter we have had 2 greenfinch appear. There has been a few years when we haven't had any at all. So this is one that appeared a few weeks ago. So again, that's showing trends, and most of that with the greenfinch, you probably know, is linked to disease. So that's why recording the health, if you see a bird that might have one of the diseases, was looking unwell rather than being caught by a cat or not sure, you can record that. Okay, well, sparrows I've mentioned already, a national decrease. In fact, in our garden, it's they've gone up a bit, which has really pleased me because one of my favourite birds. And then siskin, the national figures are showing an increase in overall sightings. They're a bit hit and miss in my garden, but this year there's been a good one for the siskins. We've had, I think it's a total of 6, which doesn't sound huge numbers, but we have had them coming in regularly since January now, and they were still coming in. Well, they were there today, so it has been a good year in our garden for the siskin. But again, you can see how these graphs sort of show the peaks and troughs, with them tending to appear round about February, March time, probably when food in the countryside is also getting a bit low in terms of seeds. So it's nice to see how what's happening in your little patch mirrors things. Song thrushes, it's a little baby one we had in the garden last year, again sadly decreased, and I don't know if you've noticed it as well, but certainly where I am 25 or so years ago, it was quite common to see them in the garden and to hear them singing, but their numbers have decreased and don't even hear them singing much now. But I was thrilled last year when a parent brought in this little fledgling to have a look at the garden. And then the other one really pleased to have in the garden was reed bunting. Again, if you think of the bigger picture and the habitat around us, it's sort of bird that might pop in when food gets a bit scarce. What I have noticed is we used to get quite a lot of reed buntings in the garden, but as the sparrow numbers have gone up, the reed buntings have sort of gone down. And through sitting and watching, it looks like certainly in the early months of spring, early weeks of spring, the sparrows tend to chase them off. So whether they see them as a competitor or not, I'm not too sure. So as the sparrows have gone up, the reed buntings have gone down. We really only had, I can only think possibly of them coming in for 2 or 3 days this year, when it was really cold. That snowy one's obviously taken from a few years back. Okay. Again, I always find it fascinating to see what I'm contributing to, what sort of pattern it's showing across the country. Okay. So that's a little bit about the garden bird watch. I'll say a little bit more about the other creatures you can record using that as well. But the other one I use in the garden, but also when I'm out and about, is Bird Track. Again, once you got yourself set up and a little account, you've got access to all sorts of information. You can add records, explore your data. With Garden Birdwatch, I didn't mention, but they have got links to identification guides as well. And just recently, they've started adding in other things like dragonflies and mammals. Now, just going off a slight tangent here, there can be an issue of double or triple recording here. So I think if you do record, it's quite nice to have your favorite one and keep with it. Otherwise, I don't think it's a problem if people are recording where they want to record, but there comes a stage where you think, well, is that bee being counted in 3 different places, which might throw the stats out a bit. Anyway, this is my checklist mode for birds flying over the garden. So you can see there's one or two unusual ones there, like a glossy ibis. Don't see that very often, but so I use this one with the garden bird watch just to record things that fly over the garden or I hear, because they can't be counted on garden bird watch. So I'm being quite detailed with these. But that's quite a long list there of birds that fly over the garden. And bird track, as I said, it is really good if you're out and about. I don't know, I use it for Fremington, Pill and Key. I've put in information from places like Eiley Marsh, Barnstaple. When I was working in Barnstaple town centre, I used to do accounts walking across the bridge. It's amazing what you could see from Barnstaple Bridge in the first thing in the morning, kingfishers and so on. So if you're really mad keen on recording, this one's quite a flexible one. The other thing with this one is you can add photographs, which can help with verifying some of them, like the glossy ibis, for example. So it's the other thing I like about recording is that I know it's usually self-evident what you've got in the garden, but it just brings it home to you. So if I add up all the different birds, there's certainly over 50 there. And again, I just love the opportunity to photograph them. So these are a couple from, again, this year. Female sparrowhawk could just somewhere down there's a poor little starling, and then this male was just sort of sitting around right next to the bird feeders waiting for something to happen. We always have buzzards circling around. I find them very hard to photograph, but every so often I manage. And then obviously jays popping in. So most of the rest of the presentation is just going to be flicking through some of the photographs. And again, I think it's really just for me to say to people, it's out there, and if you just do a little bit to encourage them in, they'll come in, or if you just sit and have a look and see what's out there, you can be pleasantly surprised. And I always love it when the baby birds, fledglings, appear into the garden. Already mentioned about the song thrush. The wood pigeon in the oak trees next to the house have got a really flimsy nest. It really amazes me that they actually manage to raise anything in that, but they usually do, and several times a year as well. Again, the baby blackbirds are really lovely as well. People say to people doing recording, well, lots of stuff's common, why should I record it? Well, it might not be common in the future, or we might need to identify, like greenfinch, whether it's in a decline and why. So yeah, keep an eye on your regulars as well. And some of them people might find a bit controversial, and not everyone's a herring gull fan or a magpie fan, but I think they're brilliant. I'm just, quite happy to record them. I haven't got round to lichens. I think Maxine's in the audience, so she might want to come and see some lichens around the place as well. And observe behaviour. I must admit, I prefer watching the behaviour to the actual classification side of things. Just the simple thing of watching the wood pigeon last year after the dry spell we had, just fluffing up and enjoying the rain. This aerial I used to be able to see from my sofa, which sounds a bit of a strange thing to say, but it's gone now, unfortunately, because I used to love watching the birds there. All sorts of birds used to sit up there. I think one year there was about 12 young goldfinches chittering away there. And the magpies, they always liked having a play and hop around there. Obviously young birds practicing. And again, magpies, I'm not sure if this one was looking at its reflection or having a look for insects. The pied wagtails and the sparrows often have a little ferret under there as well. Butterflies, well, I record them on Garden Birdwatch, but obviously Butterfly Conservation will have information that you can record on. So the next few slides are just some of the ones we have in the garden. The speckled wood is always in the garden from sort of April on and off through to about September. I think it's because we're near a wood and might even count in our little part of the housing estate's a little woodland glade. So they're certainly a regular visitor. The skipper, very rare. I think I've only seen one once. The other thing about citizen science, I think we have to assume if we don't see it, that it's doesn't mean it's not there. If we do see it, it's a bonus. So it might be when my back's turned, there's more of them around. And holly blues coming. I've got some holly around as well. And the sorts of flowers that are really popular, the geranium, perennial geranium. I've got all sorts of those. Honesty and osteospermum daisies. So we've got up to 21 butterflies. Here's some of the others. Most of these are familiar to people. Painted ladies, hardly saw any of those last year. I think overall, again, over the last 25 years, the garden would show a trend of down for butterflies, which is pretty common at the moment. The other thing that's popular in the garden are damsons, and some of the butterflies, notably the red admirals, will come in for those. And I'm just amazed at how raggedy they can get and still be flying around. But yeah. This is definitely through the window and a bit of a rubbish photo, but we used to get silver wash fritillaries sort of once or twice a year. Again, didn't show last year. I think again, it's because we're close to a wood that we've had those. The orange tips are always regular. We did have some cuckoo flower in the garden, but that seems to have disappeared. But they're very happy on the honesty instead. And also the buddy is quite popular as well. A few more there. I found certainly, as far as citizen science goes, clothes washing is quite good for all sorts of creatures for sunning themselves. Again, another popular flower is the heed, which is what the gatekeeper's on there. So again, a mixture of native and non-native plants in the garden. Now, as soon as I start looking more closely at the creatures, the stories behind them get a bit more interesting, or not so interesting, I suppose. Obviously, large white caterpillars aren't everybody's favourites, but they're pretty interesting. And we've grown nasturtiums in the garden, so that sort of distracts them a bit from other things they might nibble. But then we've got parasites coming in as well. So, you know, that makes you think, well, the parasites will probably help keep the caterpillar numbers down a bit as well. And then there's a chrysalis there. Again, this is my excuse for not washing around the window frames outside sometimes, because there might be creatures there. Dragonfly and damselflies, had 6 that I've managed to identify with some help. This one was a bit of a surprise for me. This was last year, and I think last year was the only time I've seen it in the garden, which was the beautiful demoiselle. I just wouldn't have thought the garden was the right habitat for that, but it was lovely to see, and it posed for me quite nicely. More likely the red and blue damselflies. And we usually get common darters, and didn't see this one last year, broad-bodied chaser, but I've had that in the past. And we usually get migrant hawker in as well. Mammal species, well, 13, including bats, shrews, mice, and voles. Hedgehogs, I've got a trail camera set up at the moment, so I've managed to capture them out and about in December and January. This little chap I ended up taking for rescue because he was out during the day in October, and you can see he was tiny and he was squeaking away. Didn't look like mum was anywhere around, so I just gave him a little bit of food and then took him in for rescue. This is much happier view of a hedgehog, really, sort of out after dark. Hedgehogs will, especially young ones, will wander about during the daylight from time to time. And I think if in doubt, phone one of the rescue places for advice, because they don't always need scooping out and rescuing. But this little chap, I was advised did, so with that. So we get hedgehogs. Frogs. Frogs, I think the earliest we've had them have been round about February. no, January, end of January. This year, they appeared in February, just in time for some hard frost, and then some more came along, and then there was some more hard frost. I think some of the spawn has been successful, but then the newts arrived. I think some of the newts may actually live in the pond as well, in the mud at the bottom. And they might eat some of the spawn as well, and tadpoles. Quite unusual to find a toad, usually because I have to disturb things, but it is nice when, if I move a pot or something, if there is a toad lurking underneath. So I've got those as well. So that's a bit focusing on the Garden Birdwatch and the BTO. There are other organisations like the Devon Biodiversity Record Centre and all sorts of other ones that will take records from gardens. But what I did last year, with a bit more time on my hands, was go for the garden invertebrate hunt. And I was thinking probably about 25 species of flies, beetles, spiders. And I found pretty quickly that there was a lot more than that. Identification is tricky, and it might be you have to just keep with it's a worm, or the Latin name for it's a worm, unless you've got a microscope. But it's been great fun, so I'll just nip through some of the things I found here. So with iRecord, again, you can set yourself up an account, and you can put in dates, what you see, and you can either do it just for a set area like your garden, or somewhere you go regularly, or just somewhere one-off. And you can put down where it is, put in a few notes. And when you submit the record, they've got a team of verifiers who will then check what's there and make sure it is what you think it is. And they're very patient. I know that because I sometimes think, oh, that's one of those. And when I put it on here, I get a comment back saying, well, actually, no, it's not. So you can learn quite a lot for this. But I try and check things before I put them on. And they are quite happy for you to put everyday stuff on. You might think, well, is it worth putting a ladybird on? There's always see ladybirds, but yes, it is, because again, as with the birds, it shows trends and times of year. So I use iRecord, and there's a place on that where you can put have a photo gallery as well. I quite like that. Right, so quick tour of things. 16 species of beetle, and with the insects, I've been just so amazed at when you stop and get close up to an insect. And I know there's people out there who do this already and won't be amazed, but I was just amazed at the beauty of them and what they get up to, and I've learned so much. So these are just a few photos from beetles. Another thing that interested me, often when you see mites on things, or when I see mites on things, I think, yikes, I better get those off me, or what's happened to that poor creature. But this one is basically acting as transport to the next meal, which will be a dead creature of some sort. So the mites are taking a ride. I saw some of the bumblebees you see with lots of mites on. It's a similar thing. They're not actually hurting the bumblebee. Some of them are actually on queens going to the next nest. So it doesn't, you learn things that might challenge assumptions. So here's some of the ladybirds. This one last year I saw for the first time. It might have been it because I was looking, so that's Harlequin one. But there's all sorts of others. And the 7-spot one is the most common one in the garden there. And this is the larvae, and they're good for keeping aphids under control. Shield bugs. Well, I had 14 species of bugs, not all shield bugs. I was confused to start with because I thought, oh, these are all different shield bugs and some other little green ones, but they're not. Shield bugs have different stages called instars, which I learned about. So these are all, in fact, the same bug. And then I found this one for the first time, and I thought, how pretty is that? It looks like it's got lace on it and copper. That's a woundwort shield bug. It was on a red rose campion flower, which isn't quite what it normally should be on, but there was some marching around. Bumblebees, as I mentioned earlier, they can be recorded on Garden Birdwatch. I record them on iRecord because you can do like a daily count if you want to on that. But the Bumblebee Conservation Society and West Country Buzz do lots to help with monitoring bees. This one, when I first had the garden, wasn't around. It's Tree Bumblebee. I think that one sort of appeared in my garden from around 2011. I think it appeared in the UK around about 2000. Again, they can pose nicely for photos. I learned a bit more about cuckoo bumblebees. So we've got one there, southern cuckoo bee. So they don't have pollen baskets. They tend to take over nests of other bees. This one I got really excited about. North Devon has some rare carder bees, moss carder and brown banded carder. And I thought, oh, wow, is it one of those? And I sort of checked with Bumblebee Conservation and they said, no, sorry, because apparently there's some black hairs and so on. And it's just a bit of a worn common carder bee. So still very nice, but not a rare one. And these flowers are brilliant, the perennial sunflowers. 67 species of fly. I wasn't sure about looking at flies. I thought, well, there's green bottles, blue bottles. I'm not sure there's much of excitement out there. So I was rather surprised there was 67 odd. And again, these ones, I did need lots of help with the identification on, which I got, which was good. But they're hard. Even the experts find them hard. And, you know, I was going, well, that's a green bottle, that's a blue bottle, and they weren't. There were other things. And then there's this one, which looks like it could be a green bottle there and a blue bottle there, but it's something called Eudosyphora cyanella. So once you start looking at the flies, there's lots out there, and some of them are very, very pretty, I have to say, when you get up close. Some of their lifestyles I sort of and a bit about. I mean, this one just looks so cute, but it is a parasite of bumblebees. Andrena bees, sorry, well, bees. So just understanding their lifestyle is interesting as well. A few more here. Empis, quite fearsome predators. I'm not sure that's a bit nightmarish, that photograph, but you can see what they get up to. They predate other flies. This one, when I first saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, what's wrong with it? Its abdomen's tucked under. But that's just that species, that is what they do. Another parasite of bees, that one. And then these are fascinating little flies on the ponds. They see them flicking their wings and dancing around. And there's one of them just enlarged. This one was a bit more unusual. And it's always, well, I was surprised at what I found in the garden that was common, but sometimes you get surprises that's unusual. So I got this one double checked because I thought it was a hoverfly, but it turned out to be a locust blowfly fly, Stomarina lunulata. And they normally predate on the eggs of locust species, but have been expanding north apparently. And the thought is that they may be predating on grasshopper eggs. That's the larvae. So again, an example of things moving that can be picked up by looking a bit closer. And yeah, I was asked to record this on iRecord as well. 2 species of crickets and groundhoppers. I don't think I'd met a groundhopper before I found this one in the garden. And thanks to John Breeds for helping me with identifying that. I thought it was a grasshopper of some sort. 50 species of hoverfly. I'm really quite a hoverfly fan now. It's just amazing. I think we've probably all seen the marmalade hoverfly, but there's all sorts of others. And if there's a way to help me identify them, I really appreciate it. So this one can be known as the Batman hoverfly because it's got like a bat symbol there if you're into Batman. This one is huge. When I first saw it buzzing around the garden, I thought, oh no, hornet. But it's once it stops, you think, no, that's definitely not a hornet. But interestingly, the larvae of this one live in hornet or wasp nests, and they just sort of eat the sort of rubbish on the ground, really. So they do a cleaning service for the wasps. And I think the other interesting thing is the wasps and hornets don't seem to attack the adults or the larvae when they go into the nests. Okay, so lots of interesting hoverflies. Moths. I haven't had a moth trap set up, so I've managed to see 24 without a moth trap. My favourites is probably the hummingbird hawk moth, and red valerian is really good for that one. And caterpillars. I was a bit puzzled by this one as we didn't have any mullein in the garden, but we've got some buddleia, and apparently they like munching buddleia as well. Our sawflies, again, if you're a gardener who doesn't like things being munched, these can certainly cause a little bit of anxiety in the garden. I've so far managed to identify, I think, 4 species. And I'm not totally sure about the identification of this one, because there's several species that are fairly similar. But again, I thought close up, you just see the colours and they're very striking. There's some of the larvae in action, munching. I think that might be a sallow or a willow, something similar to that sprung up in a pot in the garden. Fennel flowers, lots of things like fennel flowers, so I recommend that. So all of these going on to iRecord to help build up a picture. It was interesting really with some of the records I put in. When you look at the distribution map, it says, well, they're not in North Devon. That happened with some of the spiders, and I checked with one of the members of the Arachnid Society on this locally, and they said, oh yes, it's not on iRecord. So that's another reason to put things on as well, to get it noticed, I suppose. Solitary bees, I've got 13 plus here. I find these very hard to identify. Again, I love photography, but with some of the things I've been looking at, you really need to capture them and have a close look, perhaps put them under a microscope. And I prefer just to watch and take photographs, and if I can work out or get someone to tell me what they are, that's really useful. These two, this one is a parasite. I think it's a parasite on this one, the megachule. This one's perhaps one of the easier ones to identify to the general identification there with the pointy tail. Some of these are tiny though. It's when you get close in with the camera and you see them, you think bees could be quite so tiny. Right, spiders. I find spiders fascinating, but there's one which I sort of have a love-hate relationship with. This was one that wasn't noted on the iRecord distribution map, and I kept getting messages saying, warning, this isn't recorded in this area. It's just a standard message they send. It doesn't mean it's not there, it just means they've not got it on the record. So it might be most of you have got one of these or several of these Miscellina fatias. The reason I find them really fascinating, but I'm not keen on them because of what they catch really. So solitary bees, bumblebees, they really seem to capture things well above their size, and then obviously they expand their size completely. I think this one's about to lay eggs. They come in 2 colours in my garden, sort of either white or yellow. And I'm not sure how other insects see them or don't see them, but they do park and they pollinate the plants that pollinators like to go to and then just ambush them, which is a very effective way of getting a lunch, obviously. This is the male, and he's tiny. I'm not surprised, with probably nervous about getting nabbed for lunch. And I've only seen one of those. They're obviously around. So interesting spider, but there are times when I think, no, can you just take a break? It did do, one of these did do a good job. We had some leaf beetles attacking some turnips, and one of these, I just saw it sort of came off the flower and marched over to the turnip leaves and started getting some leaf beetles for lunch. After about a week, all the leaf beetles had gone, so I don't know whether it was just that spider that did it. And then, yeah, again here, I've not seen this hot type of hoverfly alive actually in the garden. This was my only record of the Sericomia silentis there, again, being dragged off. Usually when I see them, it's too late to attempt a rescue. So 30 species of spiders. Indoors as well. This one, I think, comes up in the press every so often. Noble False Widow. This is a male, I think, around the house. I think they originated in the Canary Isles, but some people think they bite, but having been bitten by a house spider that I nearly trod on, I think most spiders will defend themselves if provoked, but they seem okay. Pardosas fascinate me. It's carrying spiderlings on its back. I think the jumping spiders are cute, if that's a good word for spiders. This one I found the other week while tidying up the shed, black lace web. With these, I always need help for identification, and some of them have to accept you're not going to get right down to the species, because without looking at things under the microscope, and you've got lots of little spiderlings there. Another spider there looking at me. It's amazing when you look at these insects, how they look back. 16 plus wasps, you might find a similar amount in your gardens, and some of them, again, I've never seen before. There's a variety there. Fennel, these quite small ones, you can tell from the fennels. This was on a brick wall, again, very, very small. Chrysis. And an ichneumon one there. And the colours and shapes, amazing. Hornets, I mean, I think the hornets are the only insect that I felt before last year would come and have a look at you and try and work you out. This one, this set of photographs, I was just plain lucky, really. I was focused on the hornet, and then this fly appeared, and she was obviously, hang on, this looks like something I could take back to the nest. And she sort of crouches there, so she's got to pounce, and she did pounce, but the fly went up into the air and saved itself in the nick of time. So again, watching the behaviour is fascinating. And wasps, I have trouble with wasp identification. I just thought I had wasps, also known as jaspers, in the garden, but apparently there's several types. There's Germanica, there's vulgaris, and you have to sort of look at face patterns and various other patterns to get them. But I was interested here, again, examples of behaviour, tackling the red admiral there, and robbing spiders. Some of later in the year, the spiders get their revenge and do manage to catch some of the wasps, but this one looks a bit grim, but it's finishing off a hoverfly that was in a spider's web. This is a hornet wrapping up or dismantling to take back to the nest. Something the spider caught. So, having thought I might get 25 creatures, and if you think of all the birds and so on, so far the total's around about 350, and I've still got a long list to be identified. We'll have a spare few moments. And there are people out there who love to hear about what slugs and snails you've got in the garden. Things, again, that you might not be really thinking someone would want to know about. Got a bit of an earwig there. Worms, again, pretty tricky, but in my garden I've also got flatworms, so I was quite struck by the decrease in number of worms in the garden, and it could be because of these Australian flatworms predating them. And finally, I think just appreciating nature. Just every so often I stop and I go, wow, this is my old doll's house, which I have plans one day to work on. And I noticed a little wasp had gone in and very kindly made a little lampshade for me in the old light fittings. So I think, the key thing with citizen science and recording is, okay, I do record quite a lot of stuff, but I also stop and enjoy it. And it isn't necessary to record everything. If you can do a bit of recording, it helps us understand and appreciate things. And certainly I've learned a lot by looking at all the insects and so on recently. But yeah, more than anything, just have a look and enjoy. And then I've got some links here, ones I use. So I've got the British Trust for Ornithology links there. Oh, quick diversion. This flower here, Geranium madeirense, it's the giant herb Robert. It's not a native, and it can spread around your garden a bit by seeds if you do get it, but it's brilliant for pollinators. It's, you could almost just sit by one of those plants and just take photographs there all day. In fact, you can do that with the iPoms. monitoring where you can do a fixed time count. We sit by a plant for 10 minutes, I think it is, and record what you see. Yep, so these are the main ones I use. Devon Biodiversity Record Centre. I haven't done much with that one, but I hope to. Bumblebee conservation, yeah. Biosphere, I think someone's going to be giving a talk about the Pledge for Nature, but it's another good one. RHS, they've got some really good resources on plants and wildlife gardening. I've already mentioned the Facebook groups. And again, there's loads out there and lots of books and leaflets. So hopefully that's given you a few new ideas, or it'd be really nice to hear what questions you've got, or if you've got some suggestions yourself as well about those. See if I can copy these and put them in the oops, not put them in the link. I will, if I can for a second, just show a couple of books. I expect we've all got our favourite books. You can get lots of information and keys on the internet, but I'm still someone who likes thumbing through books. You can see that one, The Insects of Britain and Ireland. Look at photos and so on. The other ones I've got more specialists, like Britain's Dragonflies by Dave Smallshare. Bumblebee Conservation Trust's got a nice one. You see, I'm a book fan as well. Hoverflies, Britain's Hoverflies, that's really good. And I've got some here on solitary bees. I find this series, the Wild Guides, pretty useful actually. There's a big one that's just come out on Britain's spiders. I found that really helpful, although it has told me I need to get a microscope, I think. Lots in that one as well. And various organisations, British Arachnological Society got little leaflets, Plant Life. Again, it might be you're aware of these. And the other ones I use quite a lot are the Field Studies Council information sheets, which you can take out. Okay, I think that's done. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. That was so inspiring. And it's so wonderful to see all your lovely photographs from your garden and how you've made your garden into a mini nature reserve, and the sort of diversity of species that you've got there is absolutely incredible. Well done. So we'll open it up for questions. So if you'd like to use the raise hand function, or if you don't know where that is, because I can see you all on one screen this evening, then do wave your hand at me physically. Or if you like, you could put your question in the chat and I'll read it out for Debbie. No one's raising their hand at the moment. So I'll go first then, Debbie. What's the most exotic or exciting thing that you found in your garden?
I think, I don't know, well, when I found the flatworms, I'm not sure exciting was the right word actually, but I thought they were quite exotic. I was thinking, how does something from Australia, New Zealand end up in the garden? But as they tend to predate earthworms, I wasn't impressed with that, but I guess they came in on a plant pot somewhere or moved in from neighbours or so somewhere. The birds, when I think glossy ibis flew over, I think that was pretty impressive. The locust blowfly, I'm easily excited actually by all sorts of things, but anything that's new to the area or has come from a long way always impresses me.
Yeah, and have you noticed, because obviously you've been recording for a long time, have you noticed there's been more exotic things or things appearing earlier?
Yeah, I have certainly noticed more unusual things, but whether it's because I'm looking a bit more closely now, I don't know. But I think probably the trend is more things are moving in. And certainly I'm noticing things coming out earlier. That seems to be a trend. The last few weeks, well, I think bumblebees been a good example. I mean, the buff-tailed bumblebee, I think for the last few years, is known to be coming out in December and January and foraging the queens. But the last few weeks, been people reporting other bumblebees out and about, including some workers. So yeah, it's quite interesting, the climate change.
It's just really goes to show how important actually that the citizen science and recording things is becoming, because we can monitor these changes over time. So that's fantastic. We've got a question from Valerie Holt. You've got your hand up there. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, we have a small garden and we've been watching a mouse recently running around, and this morning it was carrying something which was really about half as big as the mouse. I don't know what it was, but obviously quite light. And when it got to a certain point of the garden, a sparrow came down and tried to take it off it. And so the mouse dropped it, the sparrow didn't get it, and the mouse picked it up and ran to its little nest.
It's amazing when you just stop and watch the sort of drama that's going on around you, isn't it? We've had quite a few wood mice in the garden. I think they like the bits of bird food that get dropped around the feeders. But yeah, they eat all sorts of things, mice, don't they? Yeah. When you started talking, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if it was carrying a baby mouse somewhere.
I don't know what it was. It was quite large and it was yellow. Really strange. Couldn't recognize it.
Also have a sparrowhawk in the garden that my daughter recorded it once, and it's actually got a sparrow. The second time, so we had the recording time. We're in the middle of Sawton Park Estate, you know, so very small gardens. And the second time I actually saw the sparrowhawk come in, you know, and the speed and accuracy which it comes in at. And really, you've got to let them carry on, because that's just part of the nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just whacked straight into where the bird's feeding station is, and straight out again. You've got it. You can see it. I think, oh wow, that bird of prey has got accuracy, and the aerodynamics are just amazing.
Yeah. Again, it's impressive when you just stop and watch. And I think it's lovely that, you know, the technology, the cameras, in fact, our smartphones, and the videoing we can do now just helps you capture the moments as well, doesn't it? But I was, when the sparrowhawk came in and got the starling, I was terrified he was going to hit the spinner clothesline and then crash into the window, but no, it was perfect, and the maneuverability was incredible.
Wow, truly well adapted. Thank you for that question. Brilliant. And we've got talking about your trail cam, actually, somebody asked, what trail cam do you use?
I've put it out for this evening just in case a hedgehog appears, but it's a Victure one, which is pictures but spelt with a V instead of a P. I can't remember what model it is. It's a fairly cheap one, runs off rechargeable batteries, and I've just got it on a little camera tripod, tiny one, and like that, probably about 5-6 inches high, and I just plonk it somewhere in the garden where I think they might be. With the hedgehogs, I have got a little feeding station, which I leave a few little bits in, hedgehog food in, so they can come in and browse. With mice, I've just sort of looked where there might be mouse holes and managed to catch some mice scurrying around. But yeah, that one works fine. You can get all sorts, and very expensive ones, but the cheap ones seem to work pretty well as well. It does both in day light and after dark.
Fantastic, brilliant. And Dan mentioned actually that he saw a sparrowhawk a couple of weeks ago in his school, and it killed a pigeon. So well done for spotting that one, Dan. Has anyone else got a question that they'd like to ask Debbie?
Has anyone else seen anything sort of early or unusual this spring? Any butterflies yet? Or sort of tortoise shell when I was out walking the other day. Yeah, they should all start appearing, shouldn't they?
It does seem like things have been definitely appearing earlier this year, definitely.
Yeah, Mary and I saw a comma butterfly at Mould Hill Garden. And we had frogs on the, was it 28th of January, I think, in the pond. It was really early. 27th of January, she says. Yeah, so that was early. Yeah, but other things seem to be late. And also, we haven't had nearly as many birds in the garden. We usually have siskins and blackcaps, bullfinches, but we haven't had any of those this winter, which is very odd.
Very fleeting.
And we have owls. We've lost a female owl, so we've got 2 gay owls who just carry on a conversation outside our windows all night. Yeah. It's very sad, really, because you're not hearing the female. And she may have died or something. So
they nest quite early, don't they, tawny owls? They
yes, they do. Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing, well, it might be some of your birds have flown across the river to our garden. But one thing I would say, with all the photographs and the species, it's with some of them it's just one of each. It's not like I'm getting loads and loads of marmalade hoverflies in, or lots and lots of particular birds or anything. It seems to be more often than not now it's 1 or 2 of everything. So
at the moment we had 8.
Yeah, we had 8 to 10 long-tailed tits at once. That's the biggest gathering. But yeah, they've all gone. They've gone to pair up, I should think.
Yeah, they nest quite early as well, don't they?
Yeah. Oh, great talk. Lots of. I thought your macro photography was brilliant on the
thank you.
The beetles. Yeah. What camera are you using for that?
Well, I've got a bridge camera.
Canon,
yeah, which I bought a few years ago when it was, I think it was the last version before they were upgrading them. So I got a good deal on that. And that does really well for me. It's often set on automatic, because often with some things you're photographing, they've gone before you've changed all the settings. So that works well for me.
Oh, really good. Good stuff.
Fantastic. Thank you, Martin. Thank you. That was great. Nikki mentioned that they saw a chiff-chaff singing in the garden on Monday, so that's nice. So fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. So I don't think anyone's got any more questions, so we'll draw the evening to an end there. So just to let you know, next week we've got a special guest. Maya Rose Craig will be joining us, who's also known as Bird Girl, and you may have seen her on TV before, and she's a young birder, environmentalist and campaigner. So we're really looking forward to her joining us next week. So I hope you can join us too, or please do come along to one of our other talks that we've got planned as part of this series. So it really is trying to encourage everybody to connect with nature and get involved with helping wildlife this spring. And also, thank you very much for coming this evening. As you know, the Countryside Centre's closed at the moment, so these talks are really helping us to keep everybody connected, and also your contributions are greatly appreciated towards the sort of running costs of keeping us going at the Countryside Centre. And hopefully we'll be able to open soon and we can all meet up face to face. And finally, a big thank you to Debbie for her amazing talk this evening. So if you could all join me in the virtual thumbs up or virtual clap. Thank you very much, Debbie.
Thank you. Right, we need to get out in the garden and have a look now.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, everybody.